Metaverse.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and it's my pleasure to share with you some of the misconceptions about medieval dining and cuisine, and one of the most awesome things about this is that I'm able to share this with you in the context of an authentic medieval feast that I was able to attend that is part of the Abbey Medieval Festival, which is hosted by the Abbey Museum of Art and Archaeology. One of the more prestigious events of the festival is an authentic medieval feast, which is held a week prior to the official launch of the festival itself. There are so many interesting facts and details that we're going to go into in this video. What types of food were common in the medieval period? What was the dining ware like? What are some of the cultural practices that were considered rude or appropriate for the medieval dining experience? And to help me out with some of the finer details of medieval dining and etiquette, I was able to sit down with Edith Korff, the director of the Abbey Museum, and talk to her about medieval dining and etiquette.
How are you, Edie?
I'm very well, thank you very much.
That is wonderful. So we are here at this wonderful recreation of a medieval festival, and one of the things that has always interested me is the culture of the time, okay, eating etiquette and stuff, and I've noticed some very interesting things already that I was hoping you could fill me in on. So the first thing that I find very interesting is, even if you were to look here, we have a conspicuous lack of forks. So why is that?
Well, the fork didn't really come in till much later, although they did have, in some areas, a two-pronged fork.
I've seen that before. It's like a skewer thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But most commonly there was no fork. Mm-hmm. So one of the dining experiences that we want to give our patrons who come to our festival is something a little bit more medieval. So we took the fork away. And it's hilarious to see people go, what? No fork? How am I supposed to eat? Mm-hmm. So just the spoon and the knife is all that they get given.
And to my understanding, and fingers. So they reach in, they cut off whatever they want, put it on their plate, and they eat. And I've actually read somewhere that it was very impolite to scratch your face when you were eating because you're using your hands to grab the food. And so if you got junk on your face and you reached it, that would kind of spoil food. And it was very frowned upon. Now, unfortunately, I can't remember exactly the period and culture this account comes from because the medieval period is a very diverse place. But the practice was, if you had an itch, you'd get a bit of bread, scratch your face with the bread, and then eat it. Have you heard that one before?
I haven't, but I totally understand that that's maybe the thing that they would do, because even like they said, when you eat with the little finger up.
Oh.
So the little fingers are always kept clean. And so they were like, if you have bowls of spices or salts, like that little bowl of salt over there, you would use the tip of your finger to pick up the salt, your little finger, and then put it on your food. So this one was always kept clean. And it's a tradition, we come down to how do you drink a cup of tea in, the...
It survived, absolutely.
Yes, and you have the little finger up, but it was always about keeping that finger clean, so when you go into the spices and the salt, you would actually not mess with your food.
I'm going to try and do that. While we're eating, we'll get some shots of me eating this finger up. What I find interesting about that, it's actually there's same reasoning behind that practice and the practice that I had read as before, about if you're going to be touching something that was a communal thing, you keep something clean to do it. Because one of the big misconceptions is that people in the medieval period didn't understand hygiene or cleanliness, when in actual fact that was on their mind quite a lot, and it even went into their eating practices. And on that note, I've also noticed something very interesting. There are balls out in front of this dining hall, this great hall, that is there for washing, but it's also a ceremonial thing. Would you be able to fill us in about that?
Yes. So when we have visitors coming, the first thing that happens is that they have their hands washed. So we have warm, scented water. It's rose water and it's got rose petals in it. And so they put their hands over a bowl. One of our volunteer servants pours nice warm water over their hands, and then one of the others dries it with a cloth. So, and it's an interesting thing, and it's part of that tradition of, you know, when you've come on a long journey, and in those days it would have been on horseback or in a carriage, you know, your hands are likely to be a little bit grubby, and we were always told, like even growing up, you know, wash your hands before dinner, you know, and so here we do it for our guests. And it's interesting because people tend to be a little taken aback, but they also see it as quite a transformational process, like, oh, I'm going into something very different and very they're moving into a different time experience. And so not only is it practical, it's historical, but it's also transitions them into a medieval experience.
Gets them in the right mindset, because there is this ambience already, because I've been told that most of the dining tonight is going to be candlelit, which absolutely makes sense. That was the main source of lighting in the medieval period, and so it's going to be surprising actually how dark it's going to be during our dining experience, which will certainly give a transportational kind of experience. So I'm very excited for that as well. Now, in regards to the plates and the dinnerware, most of the time I understood that it was wood, but if you weren't in the upper class of society, it would be of some type of metal, I'm assuming.
Like pewter.
Pewter.
Yes. But you notice that at the moment we have no plates on the table, but what we will get is a bread plate. So this is a plate made out of bread, and it's called a trencher. It will be on your place setting, and the food will all come in on big platters, which are then placed on the high table in front here or in the middle of the long messes, and you will then take the food off that and put it onto your trencher.
Oh.
And so then you eat from that. So the role of the trencher is to absorb all the juices from the meat and the gravies. And it's very bad manners to eat your trencher.
Is it? Oh, I was thinking that's going to taste delicious.
Oh, no.
No eating the trencher.
No, very bad manners to do that. And what happened traditionally at the end of the banquet, these were all collected up and given to the poor.
That's wonderful.
And it was called giving alms to the poor. And that's where that saying comes from. And because it was rich with all these gravies and juices, so it was actually quite healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, these large feasts were one of the big events of medieval life. And one of the ideas that I get people saying to me is like, their lives must have been so boring. What do they do and stuff? What do they do for entertainment? Well, this is a classic example of one of the things they did, and it was an absolute, I was going to say circus, but it's a wild time. What type of entertainment are we going to be seeing during the tonight's?
So we will see, traditionally, we will see music, bands. Tonight we actually have a harpist playing. We also have a Turkish performer. He's got some dancers who will be performing with them as well, and they're playing drums. We have a fire display, so we have some traditional fire twirlers who do a very spectacular display. And we like to get the audience up, or the guests up, dancing as well. So we try to do some medieval dancing, and then our steward of the hall normally leads some guests in some form of morality play, which was a big part of the Middle Ages, because of course the church played an important role. And so plays were normally based around some sort of morality tale. Sometimes they can be a little bit on the bawdy side, but not over the top.
Well, that's another thing that I've learned about the medieval period. Their standards of prudishness and what is appropriate or not can be very different, where one things we think are fine is very inappropriate for them, and things that we would think to be very inappropriate, perfectly fine as well. It's going to the past is like travelling to another country.
Yes. Absolutely. Where the customs and the practices are just very different from what we're used to, and what's, as you say, what's acceptable to us was not necessarily acceptable to them, and vice versa.
So I'm assuming there's going to be a prayer or a blessing of some type on the food. Of course, the Middle Ages being a very religious time.
Absolutely. Our steward of the hall, Sir Blair, will do a blessing in Latin.
Latin. Wow. That's sorry. That's going to be great because Latin sounds amazing when you hear it. So
Yes, so he starts with a prayer, and we also end the evening